Welcome, guys. So I'm going to go through this with you. Enough of you guys kind of sent me some messages that you were interested in hearing about change of direction, how we're looking at it, and what direction we're going to start going with that, and how we're programming it. Which actually programming it, if you guys want to dive into another discussion, we can, or I can make a video kind of going more in depth of like what a typical session might look like, types of drills you can use and whatnot. But, so first off, what we talked about, staff meeting, was limiting factors. So just over time, I've been finding consistent things with kids that make it very evident that they just simply don't have the strength or the positional strength or awareness to change directions and be quick. And this also is going to carry over to acceleration. Strength, I wrote down, particularly knee over toe. So we've had a lot of success with changing our movements to a more knee over toe position, front squat with wedges, knee over toe lunges, just a lot of stuff you see on the internet now. We're doing a lot of that, more so than encouraging the knees behind the toes, obviously. So limiting factor, another one is maintaining shin angle, which again falls back to strength. And then a way to assess it, or something we put into our assessment to kind of be aware of it, is a side lunge or a Cossack squat, however you want to say that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But an athlete's ability to do these well is also seems to have a pretty big indicator on their ability to accelerate and change directions effectively. Okay, so this is a movement you'll definitely want to progress, test, and challenge athletes with, like their ability to stay upright with their chest, drive the knee over the toe, and the strength to drive out of that. That all carries over a lot to change of direction and being able to maintain shin angles. So those are some limiting factors, some ideas that we've started looking into, just because we found correlation between the athletes not being very quick and their inability to do some of that. Okay. Also mastering static positions, talking about kneeling starts, starting on the stomach, lateral starts, think of like base stealing, stepping over, crossover step, and then a jump back step, which is just they're in their 2-point start. They literally jump back with both feet, load dynamically, and take off. What all these are trying to do is get them in that position with the knee over toe, starting position, so the correct position to start a sprint from, and challenging that position and making them either have the strength to do it, so they'll do it correctly if they have the strength and start to work on that acceleration and get horizontal, or if they don't have the strength, you'll notice that they tend to pop their butt up into the air and then pull their shin more vertical, recruiting more of the posterior chain. The problem with that is now the hips are behind, so they're going to be overstepping and decelerating themselves every step. Okay, that's a big one to look at, mastering those static positions, because if they don't have the strength to do it from a static position, obviously when it gets dynamic, they're going to lose position as well. So mastering static positions is huge. Now, actual change of direction positioning. This was Coach Matt went over this at the collective, at one of the collectives I went to for Power Athlete. But the big thing we found is weight distribution. Okay, so this has been huge implementing with our athletes. It's not very common for them to understand how to do this correctly, and you'll find the athletes actually lean to the outside foot when they're changing direction, so their body weight would be on the outside foot, which is causing them, A, it's a lot slower, B, they might not be able to change direction, bounce, all kinds of different things. So being able for the athlete to load over that knee over toe position to the inside as they go to change direction. So if they were going to come back and change direction this way, straight leg on the outside, knee bent, weight over the inside foot as they go into a change of direction. They will typically do this in a 5-10-5 if you teach it right with the cones. But once you take the cones out of it, I found a lot of athletes don't do this, and they're not very good at changing direction. And once you kind of feel this, practice it on your own, you'll know this is the way it has to be. It's obviously the most effective, feels the best, and it's just a skill that not a lot of us have. So either way, you see I drew arrows either way, inside legs loaded, knee over toe position, straight leg, weight distribution over the foot, which again ties back to the Cossack squat, right? The ability to load that position. That's kind of the keystone of this whole thing. Is a lot of kids can't do that, don't have the single leg strength to do that. At which point you need to incorporate a lot more single strength stuff. Single leg strength. and that also carries over, I wrote Excel mechanics, because that carries over the acceleration mechanics, the ability to keep the knee over the toe, just even a linear, straightforward effort. That's going to be what allows an athlete to accelerate quickly, okay? Which there's a lot to get into on acceleration, but that's where most athletes live and breathe outside of a few sports. So prehab, these are stuff we've been emphasizing in our prehab and our warm-up. Just to give you kind of direction with how you can start attacking some of this stuff. Any kind of hip extension movement, an ankle mobility movement, and a stability or trunk movement in our prehab. So right when athletes come in, we actually will roll out and then go into this. We'll change it. I think right now we're doing it every 2 weeks. We're changing these movements, but we just pick a leader for the group and that kind of downtime in the beginning, and they are responsible for taking them through this. And then the warm-up, thermogenic, obviously get the body heat up, get the blood flowing. Mobility, ground and walking, so any type of mobility you want to work. Neuroactivation, moving through space. And then finally a plyo before we go into some sprint work. So that's kind of our flow every day when we come in, going into that. And then we've been doing a lot of single leg stuff. So obviously we've been doing it as a main priority strength movement. Once a week, a single leg variation of a movement, and then at least 2 times a week in our accessory work, we have a pretty knee over toe aggressive position, single leg type of work. Okay, and then I wanted to know, I didn't write this down, but it just popped into my head. What I've seen as well, especially in this plyo phase, and then carrying over to acceleration or sprinting, okay, is a lot of athletes, we do a lot of pogos now, lower leg training. So I'd recommend trying to train the lower leg, being able for an athlete to keep a stiff ankle, stay up in their forefoot, jump from that position, land in that position, get out of that position. Because a lot of athletes can't do that, or their heel keeps dropping to the ground every rep, which is a big indicator that they don't have the lower leg strength to be dynamic off the floor. Jump fast, accelerate fast, all of that. So this is something that previously, a year ago, we were neglecting for sure. Lower leg conditioning and strength. So that's become an emphasis for us as well in accessory work, or pairing a dynamic that really is intense with the lower leg, like a band assisted jump, pogos, anything like that, making them stay in the forefoot. So that has been big. We've been working that in and actually throwing that in as a dynamic oftentimes between a strength movement. So kind of, you can just think of it as dynamic contrast work. But that's kind of the concepts we went over. Let me know if this is helpful. If not, where I could do a little bit better on that, or what you were looking for. And then I could potentially do another one of these, kind of going over the flow or actual exercises we use for acceleration days, and then top end mechanic days. So the tough part sometimes is space. Like even in this 4,000 square foot space, we're running out of turf room. So we're moving in March, but that's kind of an insight into kind of where there's a big hole, these limiting factors, and then how to start to look at that. Obviously, change direction positioning is huge. A lot of kids do not get this part. So if you can teach that well, and then they're strong in this position, so they're able to maintain it, they should be able to accelerate well. As they start to understand, they should have the prerequisites to accelerate well and change direction well. But if they don't have the strength or those prerequisites and they can't maintain shin angles, it doesn't matter how much change of direction work you do. I don't think they're ever really going to get that quick. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Rock on.